Everyone, Dave here again, Blue Bears Games. $20 budget decks. This one, Vampires. It's a little different than the mono black Vampires. If you notice the Y in there, the Y is because this is red black. These are fiery vampires. I know, it doesn't make sense, does it? Fire and vampires don't go together, but they do in this deck. So let's go ahead and take a look. Alright, so the red vampires are a little bit more interesting than the black ones in some cases. While the black ones are more attrition style, where they deal damage, you gain a life kind of thing, these ones are more old school Sanger vampire styles, and I'll show you them as we go. So we'll start off with Insolite Neonate. It's your one drop. The reason for him is the menace. It's your first drop. You can get menace. You can get some damage in right from the get-go. The second ability could be useful if he's no longer useful on the board. You can go ahead and sacrifice him to draw a card. Obviously, you have to discard a card, but you could discard anything that you don't need. So I've got two of those in there. And now, this is where I say the Sanger Vampire effect. So, Falconwrath Exterminator is a 2-to-cast 1/1. The Sanger Vampire effect is that whenever this card deals damage to a player, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. That's the Sanger Vampire effect. So I will refer to that as their ability when I'm talking about each card. So this guy has the Sanger Vampire effect. He has an additional ability, which is that he can take those counters and deal damage to a creature equal to the number of +1/+1 counters on him. Now, keep in mind, it reads that it deals damage to a creature equal to. It does not say anything about removing him. So, the bigger he gets, the more direct damage he can do without having to tap him to a creature to clear them off the board. So, I got two of those in there because they're very utilitarian. Alright, the next one is Crossway Vampire, 3-to-cast 3/2. When he enters the battlefield, or she, I don't know which one's which. Looks like she. Target creature can't block this turn. It's kind of important if you can control the combat with some trickery like this, making it so that they can't block with the creature, specifically one that's bigger than one you already have. That's always a bonus. I've got two of those in there for some combat trickery. Alright, the next one is Havenghoul Vampire. 4-to-cast 2/2. Has the Sanger Vampire effect, so it gets the +1/+1 counters if it deals damage. And then it says, whenever another creature dies, anything, doesn't matter if it's yours, doesn't matter if it's your opponent's, any creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on him as well. So he can get really big really quickly. Next, Heirs of Stormkirk. 4-to-cast 2/2. Has Intimidate, meaning that it can't be blocked except by artifact creatures or red creatures. It's a red fear for the most part. Also has the Sanger Vampire effect of getting +1/+1 counters when it deals damage to a player. So they can get big because they have evasion. Alright, the black 1-drop is Ghoul-Draz Vampire. 1-to-cast 1/1. That is a little different than the Sanger Vampire effect ones. It says, as long as your opponent has 10 or less life, Ghoul-Draz Vampire gets +2/+1 and has Intimidate. So he gains evasion. It's not flying, but it's a little bit of evasion, and he gets a buff. So it becomes a 3/2. So I put that in there for, I know early game it's not going to matter, but if you can get the damage in and get some counters on your guys and start clearing the board with, you know, some of your creatures like the Falconwrath, you can get through and get him to a 3/2 quickly. Alright, the next one is Child of Night. Essentially just the 2-to-cast 2/1 with lifelink. It's just to help you gain some life. And it's a vampire that fits the theme. Skymarch Bloodletter. 3-to-cast 2/2 flyer. I had to get flying in here somehow. And the only way to do that was with the black vampires. For some reason, not a lot of, if any, of the red vampires fly. Couldn't figure that out. So I went with Skymarch Bloodletter to help with that flying. When he enters the battlefield, it's more, target opponent loses life, you gain a life. So I've got a couple of those in here. Alright, the Vampire Lord. I know there are many. This one's a little different because it's the red version. So it's the red, a black, and a colorless. So 3 to cast. 2/2, first striking, and other vampires you control get +1/+1 and first strike. So that's your Anthem, and it gives an additional bonus of giving them all first strike. I do believe there are newer versions of cards like this from, I believe, Core 2020 or Core 19. I have yet to open all of it, so when I do, I will actually make another version of this deck that is a little more updated. 2 of those for your Anthems. The next card is Vampire Sovereign, 5 to cast, 3/4 flyer. Flying is important in this deck. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. So, more of that. The removal is vampire based. So, Feast of Blood, 2 to cast sorcery. You can only cast it if you control 2 or more vampires, so try to keep your vampires alive. Destroy a creature, you gain 4 life. Pretty simple. It's one of the cheaper, it doesn't have any drawbacks to it. You can cast it and destroy any creature. And you gain life on top of it. This one was actually an auto include here. I wanted to give this a try. I like it. It's pretty cool. It's Stensia Banquet. 3 cast sorcery that deals damage to an opponent equal to the number of vampires you control. It's pretty good if you've got a whole bunch of them out. You can actually just kill your opponent without having to attack. However, the draw card on the bottom, that is more important than the other part because it helps you draw cards in the red-black area that doesn't hurt you. So I put 2 of those in. Shocks, I put them in every red deck because they are just utility. They are simply instants for 1 that deals 2 damage to anything. Annihilating Fire, I've explained before why I use this instead of some of the other ones on a lot of decks. It's to help with that recurring theme that you do run into a lot. Apparently a lot of people like zombies, a lot of people like recurring things. They like the skeletons to go with it, so I have to put those in there to battle that. Alright, Terror. Just to basically 2 to cast to destroy a non-black, non-artifact creature. Hopefully you're not playing a mono artifact or a mono black deck, so I got a play set of those in there. Alright, Grisly Spectacle. It's 4 to cast. It's an instant, so you can play it on your opponent's turn. Destroy a non-artifact creature, and its controller puts a number of cards equal to that creature's power from the top of his library into his or her graveyard. The point of this card is for the kill. The actual milling is what they call it. The mill effect is actually just a bonus to get rid of resources on your opponent's side. 2 of those. Alright, now for the rares. First one I chose was Markov Blademaster. 3 to cast, 1/1, double striking, Stinger Vampire. So you get him out early. If you can get him through on the first hit, because remember he's a double striker, so he deals first strike damage and then regular damage. You get him through once, he's a 2/2, now he's dealing 4 damage. You get him through again, now he's doing 6 damage. So, pretty good, he's just utility. I like him a lot, and I put him in there. Next one is Blood Crazed Paladin. 2 to cast, 1/1 flash. And he enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter over each creature that died this turn. So, say somebody does a board wipe, you or your opponent. You have him in your hand, you put him down, he ends up being probably a 5/5 or a 6/6, and your opponent has nothing. So, the next one was Kazarov the Sengir Pureblood. He is expensive, he is a 7 to cast 4/4, however, his abilities are amazing. He has flying. Whenever he has a better than Sengir Vampire effect, it says whenever a creature an opponent controls is dealt damage. Remember, they don't have to die on this one. So whenever they're dealt, a creature on an opponent's side is dealt damage. Not killed, but dealt damage. Put a +1/+1 counter on him. And, oh, look at that. He's got a red ability built right in that deals damage to a creature. So essentially, he can just keep himself growing and growing and growing. And remember, he's flying, so he's evasive. So, you get him out there, you make him a 6/6, a 7/7, an 8/8. How many people can deal with an 8/8 flyer? So, I put that in there. Alright, the special card is in Garrick's Wake. I told you I use this for many decks because it just works. If you're stuck in a clogged board state where you guys are just sitting there and you get to your 9th mana, it just destroys everything on your opponent's side and you're good to go. You swing in and you win. So, alright, for the lands, we are black-red. So Rakdos is what they would call it. So I've got swamps and I've got mountains. And of course, my faux fetches. This time I chose Terramorphic Expanse. I guess I had a couple of those lying around. Search your land library for a basic land card, put it in the play tapped. It helps, as I've explained before with many of the other videos, faux fetches to me for a budget work because they help eliminate bad. They don't totally, but they help to eliminate bad draws later in the game. Lands are not always good to draw when you've already got 7 out, so it helps to eliminate that. And of course, a play set of Rakdos Guild Gates for the helping to mana fix for the 2 colors. Alright, so there you have Vampyres $20 budget deck.